Welcome back. We're doing another episode of Pioneers and Builders in Jacksonville. We call it PB and Jax. For us, it's our favorite podcast. I don't know if it's yours, but great episode. We're here. We're live at the Beaches Museum with the executive director and the Mayor of Jacksonville Beach, Miss Christine Hoffman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. I know kind of been a few weeks trying to get this together. I'm glad we finally did, but we were talking off camera. This place is incredible. I'd never been here before until about 2 weeks ago when we came to film some of the stuff, and it's kind of incredible how much history is jam-packed into Jacksonville Beach.
I think people are really surprised by, you think of St. Augustine and Fernandina as being kind of the older parts of our community, but the beaches have a really rich history, and we demonstrate that all the way from the indigenous people, the Timucua that were here, and then early settlement, and then the development of the beaches area onto current. So this museum's been here about 20 years. This year it'll be 20 years, so we're really excited to have been sharing our history for that long.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. Well, thank you for putting this together, and thank you for making it free so that everybody can come.
We have a generous donor who sponsors it every year and has done so for about 11 years now to make it free for everyone, which is a really fantastic feature.
Yeah, that is wonderful. I definitely want to talk about the museum. I want to talk about the fact that you've been the executive director here for a while. We'll get into the mayorship here in a bit, and then we'll talk about Christine Hoffman, the person. But let's start with the museum. How long have you been a part of the museum, not just the executive director?
Sure. So I joined as a board member originally. I was really interested in being on some of our local organizational boards. I had been on the Beam board for a few years and joined this board in February or so of 2014. And then a few months after that, the executive director announced he was going to be resigning and just didn't even have museum director on my bingo card at all. Yeah. But I thought, this was maybe a sign that this was the next step for me. And when I came on, it was struggling a little bit, had not really kind of recovered from the 2008 and some of the uncertainty there. And it was a really great opportunity for me, got my blood pumping to kind of right the ship and get the museum heading in the right direction. So it'll be 12 years in June that I've been here.
Wow. When you were on the board, what else were you doing? I assume it wasn't a paid board seat.
No, it was, definitely volunteer board. I was working at TPC Sawgrass. I was there for about 6 years, doing weddings, special events, some of their nonprofit and corporate events there, which it was a great time to be at TPC. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of action there, as our community knows. But before that, I was really in the nonprofit field. So I'd been with the American Cancer Society in a couple different capacities for my career up to that. So when I left TPC to go to the museum, people were very confused. I'm like, that's actually, TPC was kind of the outlier of my career, but I'm really glad, everything has kind of built on itself. So I made so many great connections and contacts at TPC, and then coming here as a board member and then on to the executive director was it was a scary step because, again, you go from this big, beautiful clubhouse to a museum that was kind of on shaky ground. Yep. But, I just kind of held my breath. Luckily, I'd already been through a couple political campaigns, so I knew just to kind of put my head down and do the work and just prove myself.
And we'll definitely get into that.
I'm sure.
So since taking over till now, it was on shaky ground. It seems like it's not at all, right? You have some great donors that are coming in and supporting. Talk about the journey from it being shaky to now being a little bit more stable. How did you implement solutions to get us to this point?
Well, I can say that this museum has always had, since I've been here, a really wonderful board and a really wonderful kind of core group of donors and supporters that have very vested interest in making sure that the museum is successful. So a small museum like this, it runs on volunteer power. It runs on a strong board leadership. All of our events, exhibits, committees have committees of volunteers that put them together. So thankfully, kind of getting in and getting your core group of leadership, everybody kind of going in the right direction. It takes a few years, and you have to get everybody on the same page in terms of narrowing the focus, making sure that everything we do is attached to our mission. Once we kind of got things stable, we did a comprehensive strategic plan, and that was a really great exercise for the staff and for the volunteer leadership to make sure not just what are we supposed to be doing, but what are we not supposed to be doing. We can't be everything to everyone, although the way this museum is set up, we can do a lot. So we can host events here, we can have exhibits, in addition to sharing our community's history. So it was just kind of one step at a time, and then we got to the point where we were able to start an endowment, we're able to diversify our revenue sources, we're able to really kind of blow out our programming too and invite the community in, but also make sure the museum is in the community, because not everyone's going to walk into the museum, but we want them to be able to see us other places that they are on social media, having a presence really throughout.
How wonderful. My goodness. What kind of events do you host here?
So we have our own events. So we do exhibit openings. We just last week had a Children's Day with Scotty Cousins. So kids got to come in and color on some of his pieces. We do chapel concerts down in our chapel at the other end. But then we also have third-party events. So we have weddings. Tonight we have a gala for the London Sanctuary. So fundraisers. So we've had political campaign events here. We've had, you name it. This is really, it's great that the community sees this as a place for gathering.
Wonderful. So I know we talked about stability, how we got this stability physically. What has changed in the last 12 years? Have you added different, could it be the art that's on the wall? Could it be some of the things that are in the exhibit over here to our right, which we're going to tour a little later? Has there been any additions, subtractions? How has it physically changed?
Yep. So the chapel came just before I started, and thank goodness that was a real important effort for the museum. It was potentially going to get torn down to make way for a school at the church where it had been previously housed. So the chapel is in its fourth location. It started originally in Pablo Beach, kind of near where the lifeguard station is now. There was a great big hotel, and those patrons built the chapel so that because they would come here for an entire winter, so they wanted a place to go to church. So then the chapel moved to where St. Paul's by the Sea is now, and then to Beach's Chapel in Neptune Beach. So when it came back here, this is its fourth and final stop. And for us, it was not only a piece of our community's history, but it's an opportunity for revenue, because we can have special events, weddings, concerts, things like that there. So it's been a really, really important addition. With that, we added the cabin, which is just right outside of the chapel, and that's the Oestreicher McCormick cabin that is coming from Palm Valley, which is now Nocatee.
Yeah.
So as that area rapidly develops, these older buildings and some of their history is being kind of swallowed up by the development. So we were able to bring that cabin here and restore it, and that happened in the first couple years that I was here as the director.
Really cool.
So physically, those are the probably the most obvious things. In terms of inside the museum, not as much obvious, but the permanent exhibit, which we'll take a look at, is our next big capital campaign. So we're really excited, 20 years later, to be able to go back in and put an entirely new exhibit there and really put something in that the community can be proud of.
When you were talking about the beach, it reminded me of Los Alamos, which is where they built the World War II atom bomb build, because a big part of that was they wanted to build a church because it was a temporary city. So if they were moving here for the winter and they wanted to build a church for a place to go, it just feels like it was a location place more than anything.
Absolutely. And they really wanted to have that connection, and they spent about $600 in 1887 to build that chapel. So it's cost me a little more than that to maintain now, but I'm really glad.
It wasn't $600 to rehome it?
Go figure. It was not, but we're very glad that it was preserved this far, because, especially with the rapid modernization here at the beaches, things got torn down and bulldozed really quickly. So some we've been able to pluck a few things out of that and save them here on our campus.
How much more space do you have to acquire things like that in place? The beach, we only have so much space here. Everything's kind of been built around the museum. So as you expand physically, do you have different places where you can house other artifacts?
Yeah, we do. Upstairs, so the second floor of the museum is our collections and archives space. So we have thousands of physical items. We also have about 30,000 photos. The photos are definitely something we are just constantly collecting and adding because they're the most popular and the most used. So people will, they love to look at them for one thing, but a lot of people will purchase a photo and then put it on a canvas and put it in their home, or you see them in doctor's offices, restaurants, wherever. Those have largely come from us, from our collection. So we have newspapers and scrapbooks and all sorts of things upstairs in our archives and collections. And we try to bring those out when we can through our temporary exhibits and our permanent exhibit space as well.
Wonderful. What came first, the board seat here or the political campaigning?
The political campaign. So I first ran for office in 2012. So I was still at TPC Sawgrass, and then I came here in 2014.
And which office was that? Because it wasn't the mayorship.
Yeah, that was City Council seat 1 for Jacksonville Beach.
And you won.
I won.
Yep.
Yes. So it was my first political campaign, and it was one of the at-large seats. So we have 3, and at-large means everybody in the community votes for that seat. So we have 3 at-large, and the mayor is at-large, and then 3 district seats, so just a third of the community votes.
And so you were at-large, city council, and then you served two terms.
2 terms.
Which was the little limit.
Correct.
Okay. Served 2 terms. So while you were on city council, you were named the executive director of the museum. So question 1 is, did the museum help you fall more in love with Jacksonville Beach, or give you a greater appreciation for Jacksonville Beach, for you to be able to utilize its history in your decision making as you were voting on things for the beach?
That's such a great question, because definitely it did. It gave me, I already had great love for Jacksonville Beach, and I think anybody who, or I'd like to think anybody who signs up to run for office is doing it because they love the place. So being able to come to the museum, I have a good friend, Chris Hand, and I'm paraphrasing, he said something along the lines that I stand at the intersection of the past and the future of Jacksonville Beach. And it really resonated with me because I could hear or have a discussion about something over there, because City Hall's over there, that's why I'm gesturing that way, but and come here and look it up and understand why was it done like that, or what was the impetus for that. Particularly in our downtown redevelopment, there's a lot of good documentation of kind of the ebbs and flows of that. So it's been really interesting to be able to kind of have a foot in both sides of our community's history.
It's outstanding, and great job, by the way, on
Thank
both
you.
fronts. City council twice, and then you said, I think I'm going to run for mayor.
Yeah, we had being on council for 8 years, I also really tried to take as many opportunities as I could to learn more, a little more wholesale approach versus just serving in office. So I did our Citizen Police Academy. I still serve on our pension board. I'm active with the Florida League of Cities. So try to be a little more well-rounded as an elected official. We had a changeover. Our longtime city manager retired about midway through my second term. We hired a new city manager, and I just thought this is a really exciting time for Jacksonville Beach because of our governmental structure to kind of see what's next for Jacksonville Beach, both internally as an organization and externally as a city. And our prior mayor was terming out, and it just felt like it made all the sense in the world. I thought that at the very beginning. Ask me again, as I'm knocking on doors every Saturday morning.
And we're going to talk about
COVID.
that too. We're going to talk about that too. But my favorite story in all of this is why you ran to begin with. So why did you run?
So I always have been someone who steps up and does the extra thing, or if they need someone to be the secretary of whatever club, from middle school, high school, through college. Being active in our nonprofit community. So it's just always been something I've done. It's just come very naturally to me not an obligation, but a responsibility as a citizen. And so everyone always told me I was going to run for office someday. And I always said, no, I'm not. I don't need everyone else's problems to be my problem. And which is what I said, but was not how I live my life. So I'll just always have that in the back of my head. I bought my house in 2010. Everyone in my family landed back here. We're a Navy family. So I was like, well, Jacksonville Beach is hometown. We're all here. It's where I've spent most of my life. And so just felt really good to put roots down. And then I was walking my mom's little dog on the beach in February, and it was cold and windy, and the only other people out there were people walking their dogs on the beach, and I got pulled over. It was by one of our amazing citizens on patrol, and they said, you can't have your dog on the beach. And I'm looking around, and there's no reason not to have a dog on the beach. It's cold, nobody else is out here. And so I went home, and I'm like, what's going on with this Jacksonville Beach? And I looked it up, and 3 incumbents were termed out. So there were 3 open seats, and very unlike me, because I am normally someone who will overthink something to the nth degree. I was like, okay, I'm running for office. You're never going to have 3 open seats and just kind of a wide open runway for people to get involved. So I sat down and talked to a few people, and at that point I did do my due diligence of what is this involving, what are the key issues, what do I need to be on top of. But that wasn't really, I guess it's not the why I ran, but it's the what made me actually do it, and kind of what pushed me over.
It was the action item.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and then once I got elected, I realized how hard it was to change even something that seemed so obvious. So I realized, and I have a lot of appreciation for when people are like, duh, why don't you just do it this way? And it's like, well, you don't know that there's just as many people on the other side of an issue, or people that have concerns about an issue that you never even thought of. So that's really where you have to stop and listen, and then think about the primary impacts and then the other impacts that you haven't even considered yet.
Yeah. Well, timeline-wise, that brings us right into the COVID period. And I want to ask this on both sides of the house. One, you were the executive director of a museum, which I understand you have donors, but kind of what keeps the museum going is to have people come in and take a look and digest what's around them. What was that like? And I want to preface this because you said the 08-09 recession helped put things on shaky ground, and which you had to help kind of stabilize a bit. Well, the next big thing that happened to us was COVID. So what was it like managing the museum through the pandemic?
It was very scary, very stressful. You want to keep your employees employed. You want to keep your volunteers engaged. You know, we closed the doors in the middle of March, and we started off the year with a packed year of programming. We were planned out. It was the centennial of women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment. Yeah. So we had a full year of women artists and a women's history exhibit, and we were ready to go. And all of that, it just one by one, we were canceling events, starting with a Mama Blue concert in the middle of, I think it was March 16th. We hung a sign on the door that said closed until further notice. So I learned a lot about Zoom at that point. I hadn't done a Zoom yet, and then I was doing like 3 or 4 Zooms a day. The scary part, you know, we had done what we were supposed to do as an organization, which was diversify our revenue. So we had weddings and events as earned revenue. We had memberships and donors. We had our special event gala. We had grants. And this one thing put all of those lines of revenue at question. And that was scary because you're ready for one of them, or maybe 1 or 2 of them. You know, maybe you lose a grant, but you can make it up. So fundraising wise, it was very scary. But we were right on top of the PPP and other opportunities for, you know, ARPA funding that came through. We had one thing that I give my staff complete credit for this was making sure that we were putting programming online. We had stacks of lectures, some of our boardwalk talks that we just hadn't had time to put on YouTube yet. Well, now we had the time. Yep. So we're putting them on YouTube. All of our history exhibits we were putting up online. We were doing really fun things on social media, like, you know, what is it Wednesday? And we'd find some obscure object from our collection. And so it was engaging the community. We were putting recipes from one of our old fundraiser cookbooks. So like think 1970s, 80s recipes. So that was a lot of fun. So we really worked on still having a presence, still showing relevance, and that really served us well to get us through that. So it was definitely scary, very stressful. I rode my bike to work every day, and I put it in the garage just to make sure nobody thought I was here working. There's a lot of space here. I wanted to keep eyes on it and just really make sure I was keeping the plate spinning as much as I could.
What did it teach you as a leader? I mean, that had to be, you have employees who are probably equally as scared, and they don't want to lose their job, and I know that you don't want them to lose their job. So there's probably a reinforcement that comes along with it, but having to pivot to online material and having to find ways to keep the museum relevant during COVID, it probably helped transform you as a person and as a leader. So what did it teach you?
Well, I think for me, the number one thing was trust my people. And I had 2 employees that had just started in the middle of January, and they stepped up in such a big way. And we're a small organization, so we can be dynamic. We can pivot really quickly. And so when they would come with ideas, I'm like, let's go, let's try it. And so, over Easter, we had an Easter bunny. One of my employees had an Easter bunny costume. I didn't know that when I introduced. I was like, you need to put that on your resume. And they did this whole series of social media things around the park. And so we were talking about the park buildings, and it was just hilarious, but it got so much attention. So just really trusting my people, and making sure that the foundation is strong. Yep. Because when a crisis comes, if the foundation is not strong, every crack is going to show. And so we had the opportunity to build everything on really solid ground. And if we hadn't, and we saw a lot of organizations that really struggled even more, but because the foundation was strong and because my staff were doing such a good job with their creativity and independence, I was able to focus on just making sure we could pay the bills and get funds in and be ready. We put our gala entirely online, and it was a huge success. So
that's wonderful.
Just being ready to transition to those things was really important.
Yeah, well, if you weren't busy enough, if you weren't mentally stretched enough, you said, let's go run for mayor.
Why not?
Let's run for mayor in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, it was a wild time. It was a wild time.
So the election, was it in 21? Was it?
No, it was November 2020.
It was, okay. And so when did you start campaigning?
So the good news was, because it was mayor, I wanted to announce a little bit early and kind of get ahead of some fundraising and things like that. So I announced in October 2019. So I had already gotten a jump on fundraising and palm cards and website materials like that before COVID started. So I was well into the campaign by then, but it's really the summertime when you're knocking on doors and getting out and meeting people. And it was not a time to be walking up to people's front doors. So it was tricky. I did it, and I was very cautious about how I did it, but one of the things I did was driveway parties. You remember everyone was doing a driveway, birthday party, graduation party. So I would do driveway campaign events, which was actually kind of a win because the people didn't have to clean their house. They could have everyone out in the driveway and garage. And just the people walking by, walking their dog, they'll stop by and say, oh, what's this all about? But everyone could feel a little bit more comfortable keeping their distance. As we got further in, I think people got more and more comfortable. But it was having already done 2 campaigns and knowing the mechanics of it, this threw all of that out, and just try to get creative and figure out how to reach people. Of course, everyone was on social media, so that's always a good avenue for campaigning. But it was a tricky time. Candidate forums via Zoom, things like that. It was very surreal.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't know, I told you this. I lived at the beach in 2020.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I lived in Ocean's Edge.
Okay.
So the driveway parties, I'm incredibly familiar with them.
Yeah.
I'll say at the beach versus most other places in Jacksonville, people were very much outside walking and taking in the scenery. So
yeah,
at least you had that. I mean,
absolutely.
So we were talking about you knocking on doors. So what did you do? Knock and step back 10 feet?
I do that anyway. So it was, and I think I shared with you, it was interesting. There was kind of some national party advice where if you're the Democrat candidates were advised to not knock on doors, and my seats were not partisan anyway, but you still hear this kind of advice of how to handle a campaign during COVID. So the advice was to not knock on doors at all and just focus on sign waving. Well, I knew from 2 campaigns that the way to get to the voters at the beaches is knocking on doors. So really kind of, because you have a set of candidates not knocking on doors, it left a lot of room for those of us who were knocking on doors. But there was politics behind wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. So you kind of had to know what you were walking into no matter what, I'm going to knock on the door and back up because everyone in Jacksonville Beach has 2 to 4 dogs.
Oh.
So they're all jumping and trying to, so I'm just, I have a dog, I know, just back up and let them get control. So I'm already going to give you space at the door, no matter what the year is. But wearing a mask or not wearing a mask was a question. And it was a very, again, surreal is the only word that I can put to it because it was just part of it. It was part of campaigning in 2020.
How'd you know what to do with the mask? Like, was it different door to door?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you have an app, like most of us will have an app that is connected to the supervisor of elections information. So we'll see, at a specific house, we'll see who lives there that is a registered voter. We can see what party you are, age, gender. That's really all you need at a door. But then there's context clues. You look at yard signs and bumper stickers, and you just kind of get a feel, as you're walking up to the house, kind of what you're walking up to.
Of course. Okay. You got elected. You won. And then first term. When were you sworn in?
So I was sworn in November 2020.
Oh, it was the right after?
Maybe it was early December, but very quickly after the election. I think it was November. Yeah.
Okay. So first 4 years, first term. What do you remember most fondly about the first 4 years?
So I was, I think one of my favorite things to do just in general is help welcome new businesses to our community. Really seeing our downtown kind of start to take hold a little bit. And then celebrating some of our special events that we have out here. We have some really solid events right now at the Seawalk Pavilion and Latham Plaza. So it's been exciting to see those kind of take hold and be successful. There's, so many other things that are, the average person wouldn't necessarily know or appreciate, but being able to keep our property tax, our millage rate is flat, having a wonderful police department, all of those things are just part of it. But to be able to celebrate some of those things that are very visible in the community has been great.
For the millage rate to be so polarizing in Jacksonville and not be polarizing here is probably a huge win.
It's a huge win. I think we are, especially with the conversation going on statewide right now, Jacksonville Beach has kept a flat millage rate. Now our property values have gone up, but the cost of everything has gone up, but we're debt free, and that really, really helps us. We pay as we go. We start to save. If we see a big project coming, we start to save a few years in advance for that project specifically.
That's wonderful.
It's really been helpful.
That's wonderful.
As a leader in this community.
Amazing job. That's very rare.
It's very rare, and again, that partnership between the staff. We have a different structure with a city manager, city council form of government. So they have a longer viewpoint. They are looking further than 4 or 8 years that the elected officials are looking.
Yeah. So first term out of the way. Before we get into the second term, I have to wonder, Jacksonville Beach is a community relatively small. Everybody knows everybody. What is it like being the mayor of a town where everybody actually knows you as a person? It's
very interesting because, and I don't think everybody knows everyone. It's 24,000 people. It's not, it's not, Neptune Beach is around 8,000. So that, you have a real diverse population shift there. But it's fun because a lot of people know me from here. I have 2 pretty public jobs. Yep. So it's fun in a way. People don't badger me about things as much as I think people think. If somebody asks me a question, if I'm, at Native Son or Publix or whatever, they're so apologetic, and I'm like, this is the whole point. You have a mayor in your community. Ask me the question. Like,
you knew that came with the job.
It definitely came with the job. Fully prepared for it, but to me, it's fun. It's fun to, especially my favorite thing is when a mom or dad introduces their daughter to me and says, "This is Chris, and she's the mayor," and the daughter's like, "The what?" And it's when you see that being cool to them, and she's the first female mayor. I just love that. So I think that's a really anything I can do to show a young person, but especially a young female, that this is something that they could do is I just love it.
I often ask people that, would your 8-year-old self be proud of you? When you think about 8-year-old Chris and somebody walks up to her and says, you're going to be the mayor one day, would you have believed that? Would that have been really cool to you? Like, what do you think about when you think about 8-year-old Chris?
Yeah, that's such a great question. 8-year-old Chris was shy.
Yeah.
So I was pretty quiet. So I was a good student, and I did, my thing, but I didn't really do sports or anything like that. I got into band. I was in the band in high school. It was really cool, high school and college. But yeah, 8-year-old Chris was kind of quiet. So I don't know if she would have believed it.
Yeah. Would she have at least thought it was cool?
She might have thought, yeah, she would have thought
Yeah.
it was cool. But
I'm gonna be mayor one day.
And I was always the person that, like, when my parents had a party, or everyone, the adults are sitting around talking, I'm sitting behind the chair listening, because I want to hear, the adult conversation, and pipe in when I can. But yeah, she would have thought it was cool.
That's awesome.
She wouldn't have believed it, but she would have thought it was cool.
Well, not only did you become mayor, 2 terms.
2 terms.
2 terms. The Obama meme where he does the 2 terms. So you're in the middle of the 2nd term, and how is this going? How do you feel about this one?
It's going great. It definitely feels a little bit different because, first term, and I should have mentioned, dealing with the media. We had a couple high-profile events in my first term that really taught me a lot about just dealing with the mainstream media, with social media, and how available I can and should be, because one of the roles of the mayor is to be the spokesperson for the city. So I feel like I'm a little bit more firm in how I handle things now than I was in the beginning. I was just trying to be as helpful as I could be, as responsive as I could be, and I realized that's not the way.
It was draining,
your
cup?
It was draining my cup, but it was also providing content that didn't really need to be content. So I realized to be a little more reserved with interviews, and help make sure that the city is pumping out information proactively versus kind of letting social media and the mainstream media drive the conversation. So it's a balance, because you do want to be responsive where you need to be, but that doesn't mean everything.
Yes. So you did bring up the high profile situations. However, one of the things that makes a great leader is something takes place and then you respond justly. And so in some cases, that led to you implementing different security protocols in the beach and whatnot. So let's expand on that. Since your first term, what are some of the things that you've implemented into the beach that are now staples?
Well, I think one of the kind of general issues that we have had are the groups that are coming in and just kind of taking advantage of the fact that we have a free and open beach, free and open public spaces to host events that are not authorized. So we had we kind of had some fits and starts of how we handled those, but now I think we've got a good plan of being a little more proactive with saying, if anything happens during your event, you are going to be held responsible. And there was a state law that changed that was within my first term that allowed us to do that. So that gave us a little bit more authority with that. So if someone's just throwing a pop-up type of event and it goes badly, now we have state law on our side to hold them accountable. Yeah. Do we always know who it is or who's responsible? Not necessarily, but when we do and we send that letter, it means something. So that's been just being a little more. We're not just a sleepy beach town, and we need to stop acting like we were. Yeah. So being a little more proactive with that. Community policing, having a presence early on, kind of in the spring and summer, recognizing the fact that we are a destination for our region. It's not just Jacksonville Beach folks out there. Making sure that we have a strong parking program, making sure that we have the technology that we need. So we do have a camera system in our downtown that we completely rehabilitated in the last few years. Drones to help, especially with big crowds. One of the most common calls we get in the summer is lost kids on the beach. So kids that have wandered away or they've, drifted down in the water. So having drones and having some additional eyes, it's a little bit of a force multiplier for some of those more common calls. Making sure our officers are paid the way they need to be competitive. It's a competitive workforce out there. So we've got, our JSO, our neighboring communities, that we're all fighting for the talent, and we want to keep the highest talent that we can in all of our positions, but in the police department, keeping especially young officers earlier in their career as they're, we're spending the time training and giving them the tools and time to develop their skills. We want to make sure to keep that within the beaches, within Jax Beach. So all of those things kind of all go together. Public safety is huge, but I think this is also about just being a community that's not going to be a victim, but is going to be, kind of take charge of our own space.
Talk to me about the drones. How did this come to be? This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah. No, we have just drones like you see anywhere that we can fly over a crowd, public spaces, things like that. So we'll probably be expanding on that too. It just gives us.
Is it the city of Jacksonville Beach that's deploying the drones? Who's flying
Yeah, we
them?
have actually a police department, a group of trained drone pilots that. Now everyone in our police department has, because it's a small department, they have multiple skill sets and multiple areas, collateral duties that they're taking care of. So they might be evidence, specialists in evidence. They might be on the honor guard. They might be on the SWAT team, but they're all, officers that have just other collateral duties. So that's one that they can do. Yeah.
So from sleepy beach town to flying drones,
you're
embracing technology.
It's a non-obtrusive way, though. It's a really good way to get up in the air and get eyes on a situation.
I think it's
pretty
great.
Quickly.
I do. I didn't even know about it. I think that's wonderful. Okay, so second term, how have things shifted? I understand you're handling the media a little bit differently, but you implemented a lot in the first term. Second term, you've spoken plenty about the fact that you're a champion for the small businesses that are here in Jacksonville Beach, but what else is going on that you have oversight on and that you're implementing and that you're expecting over the course of the rest of your second term?
Yeah, I think we're going to start to see some real movement in our downtown area, which was a big push for me in all of my campaigns. I'm a big believer that downtown Jacksonville Beach can be something really special, and I feel like we're getting there. And I hear it from people that they love to see what's going on. You think about, and this has been an area where being over here at the museum has really helped, because I can see the history of attempts of redevelopment and, things that people loved out here at the beaches, the roller coaster and the flag pavilion and things like that. Well, what happened to them and why? And where are we now to build off of this area that we have? So I think we're starting to see some really positive development where we're taking better care of our spaces. Public art is coming on very strong, which I love. So I think that's for me the biggest focus, but we're also doing a lot internally. We just redid our entire land development code and our comprehensive plan, which doesn't sound sexy, but it's so important to the community and to the future development. Or really at this point, we're at redevelopment, because most of our community is built out. So we have to think about what do the next 20, 30 years look like in our community, and what's the right way to get there, knowing what we have, what we're already kind of the cards we're playing with in our community already.
With I know the museum pays homage to the history of Jacksonville Beach, which does an amazing job. Shedrick, who's behind the camera, and I came in here not too long ago, and we were just blown away by even just some of the stuff that was invented here. It's unbelievable how much Jacksonville Beach has played a part in all the way back to the Civil War. It's unbelievable. Some of the things aesthetically that caught my eye that I'm probably the most interested in were what the boardwalk looked like, and the Ferris wheels and the roller coasters and all these other things that look like a traditional beach. And I understand why they're not here. I understand we're in the middle of a hurricane vortex and things can get blown down pretty easily, but is there any possibility in the future that we could erect a model roller coaster or a model Ferris wheel or something that we can really put as a statuesque figure to pay homage to?
I think that maybe like in a public art type of setting, probably. I don't know of any push to do that, but what's really interesting, you mentioned hurricanes, and we've only had one direct hit here in our modern history, and it was Hurricane Dora in 1964. And that, if you look at the track of that hurricane, it was kind of a freak thing, because we're used to them kind of doing that. And Dora did this, and which was very unusual. And it hit hit south of here. But when people say, oh, the last hurricane, we have not been hit by a hurricane since then. So I always try to encourage people to not get complacent, because they really don't know. I don't even think anything's been a tropical storm when it's still here. Maybe.
Well, Matthew
was Matthew still a tropical storm?
Matthew was a hurricane, but we only got the outer bands
right
because it went up
so
the coast.
In terms of a direct hit, though, Dora is the only one. So Dora was one thing that accelerated the demise of the amusement area at the beach, and that really had been like that. Jacksonville Beach, even when it was Pablo Beach, was a destination for fun. So you could get on a train from Jacksonville and come out here and spend the day. You rented a bathing suit. You could go out, enjoy the amusements, enjoy the beach. You could drive your Model T on the beach. Up until the 70s and 80s, you could drive your car on the beach. And it was a lot of frivolity, but also a lot of things that, as Jacksonville Beach became a suburb, wherein you didn't have just your beach people living here, you had new people coming out. You had civic leaders that didn't like the gambling and whatever else may have been going on up here. But you also had, everyone starts to have air conditioning, everyone starts to have a car. You start to see malls, shopping malls, Walt Disney World. So there were so many other factors besides just being oceanfront in a hurricane prone area, or not prone, I guess I shouldn't say that, but a storm prone area.
The path. Alley.
Exactly.
Hurricane alley.
Exactly. So all of those things kind of all started to lead to the demise of the amusement area. But it had been there really since the late 1800s. It started with Little Coney Island up there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I just think it's cool what we've done here.
Yeah, it's neat to see it. And I wish that there was, at this point, somebody willing to put a roller coaster on their oceanfront property is probably a long shot. So
even if it's just a little model,
yeah,
just something that pays homage. Okay. Well, a couple of questions about mayorship and the museum combined. As mayor, first term and a half in, we've got about half a term left, maybe a little bit more. What are you most proud of?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I'm proud of everything that I see. I mean, it's just the businesses. I'm proud of our events. I'm proud of our park system. We have amazing parks here at the beach, in Jacksonville Beach. In particular, Sunshine Park, the skate park is something that's come in since I was on council. So just really having some assets that our community can be proud of. I'm proud of our relationship with the other cities, with Neptune and Atlantic Beach. We really have a good, solid, we're all different. We all have different priorities. We have different citizenries. We have different types of communities, but we have really good working relationships with each other, and with Jacksonville. So, we're part of Jacksonville. It's, as a consolidated government, we have our own municipal responsibilities, but we're still part of Jacksonville and Duval County, so that relationship's really important too. And I also really am proud and happy that we have a very congenial body on our council. Everybody's very professional. We may not always agree on things, but we leave things at the dais, and I think that there's other areas that don't have that, and you see it, and it makes me really happy to have those colleagues. And then I think our city staff are just so focused on customer service and serving the citizens, serving our community. I'm proud of that every day. And our police department is probably the ones that are seeing our community the most and the most frequently. And I just hear good things about that level of service and the level of assistance. Beaches Energy, I can't forget Beaches Energy. Everybody loves them. They do a great job.
Yep. Yeah, I remember having them when I was here.
Yeah.
It was great.
They're great. And they're also super focused on customer service. Having a municipally owned utility is wonderful for the beaches. And they serve Neptune Beach and into Ponte Vedra, so even outside of Jack's Beach. Okay.
Is there anything that you could go back, I don't want to say have a do-over, but maybe something that you experienced for the first time because, you were the mayor for the first time. It's not like something that you've been accustomed to your whole life. But is there something that took place that you could go back and wish, like, well, now that I know what I know now, I'd like to do it a little differently?
Yeah, I think how I handled the media in with Orange Crush. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember Orange Crush.
That was
Yeah.
it was coming in right on the heels of COVID. You know, we had Spring in the Blues, which has been here for 30 some odd years and is a super popular local event, had just canceled because of the uncertainty around COVID. And then this new event comes up that wasn't permitted. They had never even asked about a permit. And our citizens were like, well, you just canceled Spring in the Blues. Why would you let this? And it's like, well, we didn't cancel Spring in the Blues. Spring in the Blues canceled Spring in the Blues, and we didn't let this. So chasing social media was hard. And then realizing that every time I spoke to the news media, it was a new story and it was a new news cycle. And realizing I needed to stop doing that, where I was here trying to be responsive, because that was just providing the story and I didn't need to be doing that.
Speaking of the media, I have a question. It just came to my mind. When COVID first happened, the beaches closed down. And
I was not mayor yet.
You weren't, but you'll remember this.
Yeah.
The beaches closed down, and CNN and MSNBC, they were using pictures of pre-Matthew to say, like, oh, look at Jacksonville, Florida. They don't care about COVID. They're out and about. They're going to be super spreaders. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. No, I remember it. I remember so much of what we did in the early days of COVID was because either everyone else was doing it, you know, we were getting pressure to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew, but you didn't want to make the wrong decision and then have something happen. So there was also a lot of, I just remember some of the photography of this wide angle lens that looked like we were all shoulder to shoulder, which I was at the beach the day of that picture, and it was not like, it was like the first day that we were reopened, and it was not that, but that was what the picture made it look like. So what I really learned from that experience was how important the actual sand is to this community. And being able to go out and walk your dog in the morning, getting out there, I'm a paddleboarder, like getting out there to do a sunrise paddleboard, running, riding your bike. I mean, you see our citizens out there with bags, picking up trash. It is so important to kind of the lifeblood of our community, and to cut that off because of, we're going to be on CNN with, you know, college kids. You know, it was spring break time, remember, too.
Oh, I remember.
Just, you know, gangs of college kids out there, you know, piled on top of each other, you know, spreading COVID. And that was what we were scared of it was going to look like in our community. So
I just want to know, though, because whenever they shared the picture, I remember it distinctly. The dunes were at the height that the dunes had ever been, which means it was before Matthew, because Matthew came and knocked the dunes down. So they were saying, like, Jacksonville Beach is doing this for COVID, but the picture was 6 years old.
Well, I don't know that I saw that picture, but I will say I saw one picture of people walking, and everybody on the beach was walking, and they were fully clothed walking.
Yep.
And somebody was like, well, that's not now, that was some other thing. And I'm like, well, that was air show. Well, nobody just walks up and down the beach at air show. You sit down and you look up. So
yeah.
I was like, this isn't a regular beach day. This is clearly something is happening here, that everyone is on the beach fully clothed walking. So whatever it was very frustrating to see the perception, and the perception really guiding the policy. But another thing that's interesting about being mayor is when we're in an emergency condition, which we were at that point, the mayor takes on a little bit more of a role, and the city council kind of has to step aside. So and that's just to consolidate decision making, and really kind of goes to the city manager and the mayor, and typically whoever is kind of in charge of the unified kind of command, as it were. So during that, the mayor is signing the emergency declarations every week or couple of days, and the city council is just, we're hearing about things just like the citizens are. So it was an interesting time, because luckily I could say I did not close the beach, but I also don't know that I wouldn't have given the information at that time.
Yeah, of course. I guess where I was steering that was, what is it like to have to manage misinformation?
It's really hard, because bad news travels faster.
Oh, yeah.
And once it's out there, it is so much. It's so hard to catch it. And then, you know, we've also kind of come into a climate of, well, you know, they're just saying that because there's no trust even when it comes from the authority. But it's very frustrating. It's very difficult. I have no patience for the people who do it on purpose. Even here locally, we have some people like that that'll share something that's misleading and know it's misleading. And even in the comments, they're like, "Oh, I know, but then don't do it."
LOL, JK, just trolling. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's very, very frustrating. And cities try as we might, we don't have big marketing departments. We're almost always chasing things. So if we can get ahead of something, I'm always really proud and really happy to see that.
Okay. I think I'd like to take a second, if you're okay with it, to let's meet the person behind the mayor's seat. So let's talk about Chris Hoffman, the person. You were raised in a Navy family. Dad was Navy. So where all did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in California, and then we moved to the East Coast when I was maybe 3 or so. Made our way to Jacksonville. So I went to Neptune Beach Elementary. I was very lucky for a Navy kid that I went from kindergarten to the beginning of 5th grade at the same school.
Yep.
So that's a time normally, and you see it here because especially at the schools near the base, those kids turn over pretty quickly to go to other places. Then we moved to Boston, Virginia, and back here. So I was a sophomore in high school when we moved back. So went to Fletcher, graduated.
Okay.
And then on my own, I went to the University of Florida in Gainesville, moved right over to enemy camp in Tallahassee after that, and then moved to Orlando for a role on a campaign to make restaurants smoke-free. Believe it or not, you used to be able to smoke in restaurants. I say that to younger people. They look at me like I have 2 heads, but thankfully not anymore. And then moved back here to the area in 2002.
I remember distinctly when I was growing up, when we walked to a restaurant, they would say smoking or not smoking.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because it was an open concept. So the smoke would just go to the non-smoking.
I worked at Shizu Japanese Steakhouse, which people will remember it was a really popular early days before you had a sushi place in every strip mall as a hostess. And it was one big room and it was smoking or non. So I think the restaurateurs welcomed it because then they didn't have to deal with that because now you have an empty smoking, one person sitting in the smoking section and everyone else is waiting for a non-smoking. But it was a big accomplishment to get that passed. And at the time, it didn't include bars, but I'm really proud to say that now all of the bars in Jacksonville Beach have gone smoke-free just on their own. So that's market-driven, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you went to Florida. When we first met, when you shook my hand, you said, "Go Noles." I appreciate that.
I did?
You're a big Seminole fan. Isn't that what you said?
I did not say that.
Yeah, I thought. Is that misinformation?
You must have misheard, yeah.
Is that misinformation? You're a Gator?
That's going to be just the clip that you use. Yeah, no, I'm a Gator.
Yeah, I know you are. So you went to, what was Tallahassee for?
So as we've already talked about, I'm always going to get extra involved in things. I started volunteering at the American Cancer Society when I was in Gainesville and ended up getting a position right out of college as a regional advocacy specialist. So we were working on educating kind of our grassroots. So American Cancer Society has volunteers across the state that, teaching them how to call and influence legislation. Most of it's smoking related, but some of it was cancer research related, whatever the case may be. So I did a lot of that. I wasn't a lobbyist, but I helped do our legislative days at the Capitol. And part of it was because when I was in college, I interned with Senator Bob Graham and was able to really get involved with healthcare legislation. So I had some good tools in my toolbox for that.
Very cool. And so back to Jax, and now that you're here, when you're not running the museum and you're not running Jacksonville Beach, what do you like to do?
So I am a Jax Beach person. I complain about having to drive into town.
Yeah.
I have way too many flip-flops, way too many beach cruisers, but I love the lifestyle here. As I mentioned, I don't do it as much as I would like to, but I love a good sunrise paddleboard out in the ocean. I love to go to our local restaurants, our local bars, whatever the scene may be. And so I like to stay close, but when I travel, I go far. So I'm a big traveler as well. So I've been to all 7 continents as of this time last year. So
yeah, you somewhat recently went to Antarctica.
I went to Antarctica 2 years ago, 3 years. It's been 3 years. Yep, 3 years ago.
That's unbelievable.
And it was in January because it's summertime there.
Yeah. And so what was the high?
I mean, it was basically freezing every day, but it wasn't too bad because you have the right equipment. As long as you have the right, jacket and gloves and everything, you're fine.
Okay. So you like to paddleboard when you can. You like to visit the local restaurants. You essentially like to take in the town.
The beach life. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Okay. Well, I'll give you an opportunity here. I mean, look in the camera. Anybody who hasn't been to Jacksonville Beach or hasn't been to the Beaches Museum, give them a reason to come. What would you say to them?
To the Beaches Museum?
Well, to the museum or the town, if anybody hasn't been.
Yeah.
What about this area is worth coming to see?
Yeah, I think we're a vibrant coastal community that embraces the beach life, and all you have to do is just unlace your shoes, put some flip-flops on, and just enjoy. This is a great place to start because you're going to learn about the history of our beaches community from Mayport on down to Palm Valley to give you a good sense of place for where we've come from before you set out and hit the beaches. And I definitely suggest starting in Jacksonville Beach, but we have some great areas up to the north with our Beaches Town Center and even some great things popping on Mayport Road. So I would say just kind of go where the wind takes you and enjoy.
Awesome. So what's next for Mayor Hoffman?
So for Mayor Hoffman, I am hard at work being the mayor of Jacksonville Beach and loving it. However, we do have our seat on the Jacksonville City Council. So there's a beaches seat that is coming open that I'm very strongly looking at. I want to make sure that the beaches are well represented. It's one of 19, but it's important for the beaches to have a strong voice there, and our current representative is being termed out. So it would unfortunately mean leaving this role early, but I think that I need to make sure all my ducks are in a row and that I've accomplished what I want to accomplish before I take that on.
If that's the path we go, do you feel that you can make the same kind of impact sitting on the Jacksonville City Council representing the beach as you would as the mayor?
I think it's going to be very different. I think the role is very, very different. But I also know that we have a really great council here and really great people that are going to step up into the leadership role. And I think that the relationship and the dynamic that we have between the council and our staff is really important and very strong.
I'd have to think you'd still have such a deep relationship with everybody involved. You'd still live here. You'd still be the executive director of the museum. That you'd still have some level of influence as a citizen to make sure that Jacksonville Beach is heading in the right direction. Right?
Absolutely. And I think that, again, those relationships that I have with the other mayors and members of council would benefit in the Jacksonville position as well. So it's all about relationships for me, and I think that I've done a really good job with that. But you're right, if there's something I want to speak up on as, at the point whenever I am the former mayor, hopefully that will come with a little more weight.
Yeah, okay. What did we miss?
I don't know.
We covered a lot.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you.
Okay.
If and when you take the next step as a city servant, let's have you back.
Okay.
Let's talk about what we can do differently with different seats.
Okay.
And how we can impact the community at large. I'd love to have you back here on PB and Jax.
That would be great.
I'll leave with this. PB and Jax stands for pioneers. It stands for builders. It stands for Jacksonville. I didn't touch on it earlier because I was going to save it till the end, but you are the first female mayor of Jacksonville Beach.
Yeah.
First and only.
Yep.
That's pioneering. And so
Thank you.
I can't think of anybody who was better suited to be on this show than you, and I really want to say thank you for being on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. It's been
you.
fun.
Yes, ma'am.